The Orioles are going to welcome the Chicago White Sox in, and who would have thought? In this case, two of the worst teams in the American League are facing off at the end of May going into June. Now, people had a good expectation of where the White Sox would be, but this is not where people thought Baltimore would be. And now the rumors are swirling because, well, veterans on going into free agency. Do you sell? And who do you sell? But the recent one I want to talk about is the Philadelphia Phillies. There's just this talk that they have interest in a couple of Baltimore Orioles, one of them being outfielder Cedric Mullins. They feel that they could upgrade at the center field position. That's the rumors out there. That's number one. Then number two, I don't know where it exactly came from, but that some teams, including Philly, would be interested in Felix Bautista. And first and foremost, who wouldn't be interested in Felix Bautista if he were available? Yeah. And two, don't believe everything that you're hearing, that the Orioles would give away Felix Bautista. So you're probably wondering, why are we having this conversation? Right? I know. Sam, you're probably wondering, why are we having this conversation?
Why are we having this conversation, Ryan?
I will tell you that, Sam. So the reason being is the Orioles are in a situation where they are not in a rebuild if they are not going to be a playoff team this year. They're in a retool. So who are you retooling with is going to be the ultimate question. Cedric Mullins is going to hit free agency, and if you're not going to re-sign him, would you sell him off to a team that could be like the Philadelphia Phillies? Makes sense, but we've also talked about, Zach, veterans that matter to this team. Felix Bautista, to me, I don't see that happening at all. I think that's just the sexy name that gets thrown out there, and you go, well, wait a minute, it gives the reaction. I would be just gutted if Felix got traded because I wouldn't understand it from any way, shape, or form. He's your guy at the end of the game. You're going to need him next year, whatever it may be. Cedric Mullins is interesting, Zach, because we go back and forth. If someone's going to pay a premium price to get him, the Orioles are probably going to listen to that offer. But the question is, are you willing to sell off a veteran where your team should be back competing in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, it begs the question. I'm totally on board with you about Felix Bautista. I mean, he's got still, after this season, he has 2 more years of arbitration. You do not sell off Felix Bautista unless, we're going to talk Phillies right now. If I'm Mike Elias and the Phillies are like, hey, we're looking at Felix Bautista, I'd be like, awesome. Andrew Painter, number 5 prospect in baseball, right-handed pitcher. Toss him in, and you can toss in, Justin Crawford, who's the 56th overall prospect in baseball, and then we can start talking. Could they trade Felix Bautista? Yeah, but the price would the offer would have to be absolutely insane. I don't see it happening. With Cedric Mullins, though, it's interesting because, like you said, it is this kind of retool. And me and Kevin have been talking about this on Kevin and Zach React after games. If you don't, they're in a position where if you do not see them with you on the future, and this goes for Cedric, this goes for Eflin, this goes for Sugano, but specifically here, Cedric, I personally think Cedric, with the leadership and then what he brings to you in the outfield, on and off the field, his defense, he is a guy that I would love to see here for give him a 2-year extension. Let him produce when this team is competitive again next year. Because like you said, this isn't a full rebuild. This isn't, hey, we're going to compete in 2 years. This is, hey, next year we're going for it again. So I think the Orioles in the next month and a half are going to have to make that decision of who do we want to bring back? And those guys you hang on to, the guys, the Suganos, the Eflin, the Cedrics, the O'Hearns, if you're like, okay, that's a guy we want to go after and extend, you keep them. But if there's a guy in that group that you're like, hey, we don't see them in our future, I think you do have to start listening. I think Cedric would probably get you especially the way he's been playing, probably the biggest haul, because he is a veteran center fielder that you can plug in, and he's going to be an upgrade for a lot of teams defensively and offensively. And I'm not surprised that he's, thrown in rumors. I mean, what team wouldn't want a center fielder who's been what he's been through, who's struggled, who's fought back, and then is producing at the level he is? I mean, 30-30 type guy. He's playing like he's on pace for it right now. So, I mean, it's hard not to see why teams are calling about him.
And I do think there's merit to this, that the Phillies are interested, because last year we heard it from Philadelphia, and they ended up getting Austin Hayes. Now, Austin Hayes, it didn't work out for Philly. Seems to be working out so far in Cincinnati for Austin Hayes, but the Orioles do have some outfield talent.
And I think that's, when it comes to this stuff, it is one of those situations where, because of Baltimore, like the talent is there in the outfield, coming in the minors. You have Bradfield, you have Honeycutt, you have Beavers. So you have guys that you look at and you're like, okay, they can supplement and, quote unquote, replace Mullins. But it's, Ryan, it feels like the same argument we've been having is, okay, you can only be so young. You need those veterans who have been there, done that, who can command a locker room. So it's not just about, oh, well, they have prospects that they can bring up. You can't have your entire team. Adley can't be the oldest guy on the team. You have to have these veterans. That's why I think it's so valuable what Ryan O'Hearn's doing on and off the field. It's what I think is so valuable about Cedi, what he does on and off the field to help this team that's not always going to be seen in the stat book and in the stats. So I think they have to make a decision. When it comes to Ryan O'Hearn and Cedi, I think you have to keep one of them. Just if you lose those two veteran voices, I don't think it bodes well for you next season. So, I do think it's a situation where you have to be, make tough decisions, but you can't just look at it at the stat sheet. You have to, and the analytics of it. You have to understand the creating a ball team and creating an entire team and the personalities that you need in there, not just the stats.
There's more that goes into making a roster, goes more into having things come together. It's not always going to be, do the stats align? Yeah, the stats are great. On paper, it always looks good, but it's the intangibles, Sam.
And I think excuse me, and I think locker room culture and leadership is really something that often, you really only hear about it when it's either it's excellent or there's something wrong in the locker room. Like with Hyde's whole thing before he got let go was, is this guy losing the locker room, right? When culture starts failing big, that's when people start putting their eyes on that, and they start to point fingers and be like, who's responsible for this moment? Where are our leaders and all that stuff? And you really only see that when it's, a locker room is excellent or it's really poor in that moment. And whereas with a stat sheet, you just look it up, you just point at it, you go, okay, here's what this guy's doing, here's how he's producing behind the plate. What kind of value is that adding to the team? And then, you can construct an entire argument around that. But if there's not, the headlines that are telling you what's going really right or really wrong in the clubhouse at that moment, then that value, that leadership and veterancy and culture brings can easily fly under people's radars.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I think what I also want to point out, when you look at the teams that go out there and have success and the teams that get hot down the stretch, right? Like the New York Mets last year, were they the most talented team in baseball? Absolutely not, right? But did they build up confidence, and did they have good pieces, and then that culture? And with Jose Iglesias' song OMG, oh my God, yeah, like that's a real thing, right? And it took them all the way to the NLCS. They beat the Philadelphia Phillies, who were the best team in baseball at the time.
It's actually
right?
funny. A year ago today was when Jorge Lopez threw his glove into the stands, and the Mets are the worst team in baseball, or was it a mistranslation? All that, and the Mets were currently a year ago today 22-33.
And then the grimace effect.
Yep,
struck.
and then when teams get hot, weird things, crazy things can happen. So
crazy things certainly can happen here. And I see people talking about the other name with Ryan O'Hearn, and this is what I honestly talk about. And the Orioles had the luxury of, you have so many talented players that you got to go out there and let them play that are prospects. You got to choose which one, but they're also the Orioles where it wasn't the rebuild anymore. You were competing to be the number one team in the American League. You were competing to make a run the postseason. So it wasn't like, let's just say in other circumstances where you can look at, the Rockies where they're like, hey, you throw someone out there, see what happens. Even if you go and look at the Nationals down the road, who they got some studs and they're looking to compete, but the understanding is they're getting there. They could make a jump this year, or if it doesn't happen, we have guys that are getting the reps. I mean, James Wood looks like nothing short of a superstar down there. CJ Abrams gets his reps. Robert Hassel Jr. or the third gets called up. So there's my point, on and on. The Orioles have players that can go out there and help a team win and go to the playoffs. Why? Because they've done that. But then who replaces that? And are you okay with the growing pains? Because then there's Ryan O'Hearn, who's having a career year. And Ryan O'Hearn is in fuego. He's doing everything humanly possible that he can do. And a lot of teams that would be in the hunt would definitely want him. But what's the price for Ryan O'Hearn? That's going to be number one. And if the price is good, you're going to listen. And then number two is, if you trade him, do you think you'll be able to get him back? Like, do you think that you would be able to re-sign him? And then the third thing is, when you are looking to shape your roster moving forward, say the Orioles don't get back in it, that's a lot of production. So that's my point. Where does the production come from? And for fans, I'm asking you, will you be comfortable if a prospect comes up that it might need growing pains, or would you rather someone else come in that fills the void, or you keep that player that is productive? And that is ultimately the biggest discussion. I think if the Orioles were to make a trade, fair to say people would like to see a starting pitcher in the mix.
Definitely.
Abel is the big one from Phillies. Painter was another one I was hearing. And both those guys look like they can deal. Looks like they can deal. But we will have to wait and see, because above all, guys, they're just rumors. And what's not a rumor? What's not a rumor is that you can hit that like and subscribe button right now. That is a fact.